So we want to acknowledge VP Wong Nickerson and team, the President's Budget Advisory Committee, and they're going to provide a budget update for us. Thank you and welcome to you all.
All right, good afternoon, everyone.
I'm so connected to share. There we go.
All right, so first of all, it's so nice to be here in person and to see those in the room here. It's been a while. And thank you for making time for us to do a quick budget update. We have sent out a budget memo actually a few weeks ago, and there really haven't been a lot of significant changes since then, but I thought it's still good for us to be here in person and to go through, highlight some of the important items, and then also have a chance to answer questions that you may have. So first of all, I want to, today cover, where we are in terms of current year, fiscal year 23-24 budget. And also the board, as you know, in September, the Board of Trustees has approved tuition increase. So we want to do a very high level overview of that. And then after that, we want to give an update on outlook of fiscal year 24-25 budget request that the CSU has made to the state. And then finally, we also want to give a very brief update on Mission Valley and Imperial Valley development. So that's it for today.
Good afternoon. I'm Krista Little. I'm the Associate Vice President of Financial Operations and Business Financial Affairs. So I'm going to get us started today with our presentation. Okay, so before we get to the budget outlook, we really want to kind of lay the basic foundation for the SDSU budget. So the total annual budget for SDSU is $1.25 billion. And you'll see from this chart that 45% of that, almost half, is the University Operating Fund. And generally on campus, when we're talking about budget, that's typically what we're referring to. And the operating fund supports instruction, student services, academic support, administrative, as well as infrastructure operations on campus. So again, typically when we're talking about the budget, we're talking about the operating fund. The other half of the budget, the 55%, is our enterprise or self-supporting funds, as well as our auxiliary organization. So that includes things like housing, parking, global campus, as well as our auxiliaries, associated students, Aztec Shops, Research Foundation, and the Campanile Foundation. That gray slice, our enterprise and auxiliary funds, are largely restricted by statute or policy. So if you think about housing dollars, those dollars are restricted by Ed Code to support housing related operations and facilities. So as such, given those restrictions for both our enterprise and auxiliary funds, they cannot be used for university operating fund purposes. So that's something to keep in mind as you think about that total pie chart, with half of it being the operating fund and the other half being those enterprise and auxiliary funds. We're really restricted in how we can utilize both colors, so to say, of money, with the operating fund being the one we'll talk about mostly today. So shifting our focus to the operating fund. This chart represents the operating fund, totaling $567 million. You'll see in gray, approximately half of the operating fund is funded through our state allocation. And those are the dollars that come from the state appropriations we receive from the state. And we have very little control over how much funding we receive from the state. It's also important to note that CSU Systems operating fund budget is actually sliced a little bit different, where 60% of the general fund comes from the state and 40% is from tuition. And overall, SDSU receives a lower funding per FTES as it relates to the dollars coming from state appropriation than most campuses. SDSU receives approximately $8,400 per FTES, while the CSU average is $11,600 per FTES. So then looking back at the pie chart, the other half of it is comprised of tuition, 25% of it is coming from tuition. And tuition is set by the Board of Trustees for all CSU campuses. So as a campus, we don't have any authority to set those tuition rates. Other fees, we do have control over. These are typically our campus mandatory fees. and include things such as our student success fee, our health and wellness fee, and other campus-based fees. And the last part of that pie is the other revenue and cost recovery. And these are largely where we are being reimbursed for services we're providing to our other campus funds, our enterprise funds, as well as our auxiliary organization. An example of that would be research-related reimbursed release time. And then shifting our focus from revenues, you might ask, how do we actually spend our operating fund budget? So the University Operating Fund is largely inflexible, with 79% of the budget allocated towards employee compensation. This includes our salary and benefits. And the remaining expenditures include things like financial aid at 11%, and then other expenses, which are largely things like utilities, insurance, equipment, software, and facilities across campus. So you can see, again, a big chunk of our budget is really related to the people we have here on campus. Next slide. So as it relates to the 23-24 budget, our revenue is currently on target as it relates to both our state appropriation and tuition and how we planned for our budget when we went into the current year. Expenses are always our largest unknown, and this year in particular, it's largely unknown due to the final compensation cost, because that's still being negotiated at the system-wide level. Something we want to make sure is kept in mind is that for the current budget year in our operating fund, the final compensation or funding for compensation has been our highest priority. So when we built out our budget, we did plan for that. And anticipate we will have funding to support what those needs are for this year. And then our capital budget, which is funded outside of the operating fund, our highest priority for those resources as they're made available is the new life science lab building. Then lastly, so then real quick, just also to provide a quick enrollment update. Enrollment does impact the budget. Enrollment is the basis for how we collect our revenue from our students as it relates to tuition and that portion of the pie. So SDSU reached record enrollment levels this fall with nearly 37,600 students. It's the second largest class of first-time students and the largest class of new transfer students. However, the CSU as a whole has faced declining numbers of students due to declining high school grads and community college students. In the prior academic year, the CSU enrollment actually fell 5.6 below its FTES target. So here at SDSU, we're actually very fortunate that we are still achieving, if not exceeding, our enrollment targets. Now I'm going to shift over to Katie, who's going to talk about the tuition increase.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Olivo. I'm in the Budget and Finance office. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tuition proposal, which is now an accepted tuition proposal. So in September, the Board of Trustees approved a proposal to address underfunding in the CSU and build budget stability. So this policy that was passed is a 6% annual tuition increase for 5 years. And this will be effective in fall of 2024. And the Board of Trustees will review that tuition rate 18 months prior to the end of that 5-year period. And this assessment will include a pretty substantial report done by the Chancellor's Office to evaluate the impact that it's had on students, both from a financial perspective, but also how that investment in students has resulted, hopefully, in student success. And I say 18 months before, but usually this process starts considerably before that, so that they have time to gather that information. A little bit of context as to why this conversation is happening now. This graph you can see here, the red line at the bottom is the tuition increases for the CSU, and the blue line on the top shows inflation over the last 15 years. And you can see that while we don't necessarily always need to keep up exactly with inflation, as the cost of goods and services has increased, as we've had to pay our faculty and staff more so that they can keep up with the cost of inflation, we have not had the revenue stream to support that. In comparison, you can see the orange line is the UC rate increases over that same period of time. So this has sort of been continual underfunding for the system as a whole, and we've really reached a breaking point. I think part of the motivation for having this multi-year plan is to allow our students and their families more consistency versus just a periodic sudden increase. And it's pretty consistent with most other West Coast public universities, which have similar tuition policies that outline future increases. Of course, we're cognizant of the impact that will have on students. The CSU as a whole, when they were developing this policy, they included a pretty substantial portion to discuss financial aid and an increase in financial aid support for students. So that policy outlines specifically that a third of new tuition revenue will go to our state university grant, or SUG. And this chart here, you can see, gives you a little bit of an idea of maybe how our students might be impacted. The dark portion is our full coverage students. Those students are fully covered, their tuition is fully covered by non-loan aid, and that portion of students would be unimpacted by this tuition increase. The next orange portion you can see is 18% have partial coverage by aid. But I think as a campus, listening to discussions, we're really looking at that 18% that are not even applying for aid. I know there's a group talking about a communication plan on how we can reach out to those students, encourage early application of FAFSA, encourage scholarship application, and make sure that we're really supporting them and ensuring that they know what their options are as well. It might just be that they choose not to, but we want to reach out to them as much as possible. And there is, as I mentioned, there's a group that's been working on that communication plan, especially for this year, in addition to reaching out to students to ensure they know what other financial resources are available, such as ECRT, basic needs, and if needed, other billing options. So a little bit about next year's budget outlook. Well, it's iffy. This is really a budget proposal that the Board of Trustees has put forward. And it used to be in November, they've moved it up to September to allow additional time to advocate across the state. But this is the proposal that the Board of Trustees put forward as far as their proposed expenditure increases. Typically, when we look at this, we can generally assume SDSU makes up about 7% of that CSU campus total. So our 567 million is about 7% of that 8.1 billion you see at the bottom for the 23-24 current base. This year, the CSU took a slightly different approach in breaking out the request into 3 primary categories. The first is student success and access, and these are things like graduation initiative, enrollment increases, basic needs, really the areas that support students and making sure they're successful and are able to enroll. The second section is institutional support. A lot of the items in here we've also referred to as mandatory costs. These are things that are going to increase whether or not we receive funding for them. But one of the big ones this year is increased and expanded investment in Title IX and DHR programs. NAGPRA compliance, required operational costs is an area that the Board of Trustees has continually requested and has not been funded in the past. We focus a lot on compensation because that does make up 80% of our total budget. But at the end of the day, we also have a lot of goods and services that we procure, and those, you saw that inflation slide, those increase a little bit every year, and we have not historically gotten any funding to cover those increases. And then debt service, we have a deferred maintenance issue on this campus as well as all the 22 other campuses. And so this request is trying to address some of that deferred maintenance need. And then finally, CSU workforce investments, making sure that we're advocating for funding to increase our faculty and staff compensation pool. And then also health premium is another, we call it mandatory cost. We cannot control what Blue Cross or Kaiser charges us, but we are requesting funding to cover that. And then the flip side of that is really, those are the expenditure increases, but how would that be covered? Assuming the general or the governor maintains his 5-year compact, we could expect $240 million from the 5-year compact. And then on top of that, the anticipated revenue from the tuition increase. But with those two funding sources, there's still an anticipated $144 million shortfall. So the Board of Trustees is requesting that the governor increase his investment in the CSU in the upcoming year. Those are the items that they requested on a ongoing basis. But additionally, the Board of Trustees made a considerable one-time request, which is $2.4 billion for the capital outlay program. And that includes deferred maintenance, capital renewal, and new academic buildings. Initially, they were trying to be a little bit more modest in their request, but ultimately decided that this is the true need of the system, and we should make sure that the state knows that that is a need, not only now, but is increasing as every year that we do not address it. So that's a quick and dirty look at the Board of Trustees request, and I'm going to pass it over to Agnes for a few other updates.
So I would like to give a brief update on two very important developments in Mission Valley as well as in Imperial Valley. These items, they actually don't rely on any operating fund. They don't draw on operating fund, but still, I think it's important to update the Senate because they are an important part of the future of San Diego State. So Mission Valley, Snapdragon Stadium, and it's been open since August 2022. It has hosted over 130 events since its opening. So we have kept our promise that the stadium is not just for San Diego State, but it is a community asset that is doing a lot of different events there. And the stadium operates on a self-supporting financial model, so that it doesn't rely on, doesn't draw on operating fund. The next item I mentioned is we have 34 acres of a river park that will be actually finished by the end of this fiscal year, calendar year. And we will have a soft opening towards the end of the year and then do a big grand opening next spring. And then other very important part of the developments are these 3 different public-private partnership projects. The first one is the first project for the Innovation District. The developer is LPC West. It will develop 315,000 square feet of a research, academic, and innovation space. And San Diego State will actually occupy 50,000 square feet of those space there, mainly research space. And Chelsea Investment will be building the first multifamily affordable housing, 186 units. It's really for families averaging, making 50% of the area median income. So it's very low income family housing. Avalon Bay is developing the first multifamily market rate residential, 621 units. And also there'll be 30,000 square feet of a retail space, including a grocery store to support the neighborhood. These 3 projects will be totally financed, designed, constructed, maintained through public-private partnerships. So they don't draw on university operating fund. In fact, they will generate revenue by way of long-term ground lease revenue. And SDSU will seek Board of Trustees approval. In fact, I'm going up to Long Beach after this meeting because we have the affordable housing and the market rate housing going to the board tomorrow for their approval. And then the Innovation District one will go to the board in a few months. Imperial Valley update. Again, the state, actually San Diego State received $80 million for a new science and engineering lab building in our Brawley campus. It is part of the governor's Lithium Valley and Community Economic Development Plan. The building will be about 37,000 square feet and will be used for mainly STEM research and teaching labs. We are moving at full speed, and we expect the construction to be completed in fall 2025 for occupancy. For this project, we are also going to the board for the approval tomorrow. SDSU also received a state affordable student housing grant. We received about just under $12 million. And we're building a first housing project actually in Imperial Valley in partnership with Imperial Valley Community College, and will provide up to 80 beds on our Cal campus. So I want to conclude. Basically, 23-24, this current year, our budget is on track from a revenue perspective. We're doing well from the state, funding, and also from tuition, from our enrollment. The only unknown we have right now is the final compensation number, what it will be. That's pending, the final bargaining from all the remaining units. For the coming year, 24-25, we will continue to plan in a very conservative way, because definitely, CSU as a whole, as a system, is facing a lot of budget challenges. We are actually, SDSU, we're much better positioned because we have very strong enrollment, and we also have been very conservative in planning. That concludes our presentation, and I'm more than happy to, open up for any questions that the senators may have.
All right, thank you, VP Wong Nickerson. We appreciate you. So I'm wondering, are there any questions? Please raise your hand. Thank you. Senator Adams, you're recognized.
Yes, hi, thank you for the report. I just had a question about the Major League Soccer team and how much rent they're going to be paying to play in Snapdragon Stadium.
So, yes, they will start playing in 2025. When they actually start playing, we'll be using the stadium pretty much, every weekend. They're paying, including the rent and concession revenue that we can generate. I think it's close to just a little bit under $6 million a year. That's our estimate.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Stoskopf, you're recognized.
Well, thank you for, I'm sorry, I'm homesick, but you gave us a nice budget outbreak of the operating budget, but you haven't told us about the other 55% of the money being spent. And I think in one of our meetings, you should talk about that in at least as much detail, where this other 55% is going. And I'd especially like to have attention paid to what the foundation contributes to our operating budget. If research is an integral part of the university, it should be an integral part of paying some of its own way in towards the operating budget. I just feel we get half the record, and I'd like to hear a lot more about that. I did note your link to the full budget thing, and I will look at that when I have a little bit more time. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, we're happy to come back, to look at the other half of the SDSU budget. That piece is a lot more complicated, right? There are many different components, all the self-supporting units, as well as the auxiliary, but we're happy to come back and give a high-level overview.
Thank you.
It's a pretty smart group. We'll take the challenge of trying to understand.
Oh, I'm sure you understand it, I'm just saying it is a little bit more complicated. There are more components than the operating funds.
We will definitely have you back. Senator Sherman, you recognize.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd. I have two specific questions, and if there aren't answers, maybe folks can return to our next meeting with a follow-up. One, it's mentioned often that 80% of the budget goes to compensation. And so my question is, what exact percent of that 80% goes to instruction? Because I think I've heard it's something more like 30%. And so I'm wondering where that other 50% in compensation goes. So if we could get numbers on that, that would be great. And my second question, if it's okay, I'll spit it out now, is I also recently learned that there is no strict walls between the university's auxiliary for-profit organizations and the university itself. And so my question is, would you be able to show us the state law and the policy that mandates that money raised in the auxiliaries cannot be used for the benefit of the students and the university?
So, the first question, does you need to come back? I don't have that number in terms of a percentage of instruction salary. We can definitely come back to that. The second question, about auxiliary. So actually, there are two different type of auxiliaries that we're referring to. One is what we call auxiliary enterprises. They're actually part of the university, but they are like housing, parking, global campus. That actually stays education code very clearly say funding for those operations can only be used, say housing fund can only be used for construction of new housing, operating of housing, etc. So that actually education code that we can, share with you so that you can see, what it says there. That's very clear. In terms of auxiliary organization, meaning research foundation, TCF, assistant students, and STEC shops. So they are actually, on the contrary, they have been always contributing to the university to help university function. So for example, associate students help contribute to different things like scholarship for study abroad. That comes from actually AS that we get about $300,000-400,000 every year. Research foundation, they contribute to some positions on campus that are focusing on research. They pay for their salary, even though they're university employees. Same as STEC shops, they also contribute to different things like scholarship and housing, student housing. So those actually, there's no strict law. We cannot have university money going towards those auxiliary organizations. But auxiliary organizations, they exist to support the mission of the university. So actually, we get resources from them. I hope that's clarified your question.
Thank you. We have another hand up, and we do have a time certain in about 2 minutes. So Senator Pomerenko, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. So you mentioned that the stadium is meant to be self-supporting. And my question is whether that phrase means that the income offsets the operating expenses, or whether it also offsets the debt service on construction of the stadium, as well as the debt service on the purchase of the land on which the stadium sits.
Yes, the stadium, any surplus from running the stadium will go first towards the debt service payment that we took out to build the stadium. And then it will go back to help fund the athletic operations.
Thank you. Senator Camper, you're recognized.
I have a very.
Oh, wait a minute, you're gonna need the mic.
Oh, yeah. I just have a quick, small question that maybe is best answered offline, but I did want to ask. I noticed in the budget, the funding for NAGPRA, the Native American Grave Repatriation Act. Was there no funding before this year for that? Because it was blank on the year before, and then you put, yeah.
University had some funding coming that came out from operating fund to fund the staff person. But the new observations or findings from the state audit say we need to do even more. So that's the additional resources we need to do the additional work.
I'll add to that. The reason it was 0 in the previous year is that the chancellor's office had not specifically given us funding for that purpose. Also, it was a university investment.
All right, well, thank you all. Wait, we have one more hand up. This will be the final question. Senator Dowell, you recognize?
Yeah, I just was curious why tuition cannot be directly tied to inflation so that the real cost is constant.
So first of all, I mean, actually it's a very good point. First of all, tuition is set by the Board of Trustee. And in fact, actually the Board of Trustee about 5 years ago set up a financial sustainability committee. And actually in that committee, they did make a recommendation and say CSU should really look at adjusting tuition every year to tie it to the inflation so that we don't fall behind. Unfortunately, that recommendation was not adopted by the board. And so now they kind of, in a way, try to do catch up, and that's why we see the 6% increase, right, for the next several years. But I do agree, I think that's actually a good way to do. But again, since the tuition policy and tuition is set by the board, we can make recommendation, but it's really ultimately up to the board to accept it or not.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much for your report. We appreciate you coming in person and hope the drive north is easy. Thank you. All right, so we will move on to our next time certain. And we thought it was gonna be a little early, but we're 1 minute or 2 minutes late. So we have with us, let me see, your specialist, well, you'll give your full title, but director of the SDSU Gender-Based Violence Task Force and other ancillary duties. We have Monica Casper. She's going to present an update on those initiatives. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you all so much for making time. I'm going to share.
Sorry, that was my fault. Just
Okay, oh good. Lovely, so I don't have to share my screen. Thank you all for the time. I really appreciate it. I am happy to share with you some of what we've been working on and answer any questions. We'll go to the next page, please. Great. So the charge from President De La Torre for the Blue Ribbon Task Force is this, which is that we have already begun to review our current sexual harassment policies, procedures, and trainings. We are recommending strategies along the way to improve communication, transparency, and visibility of the policies, procedures, and trainings. We're also hoping to recommend opportunities to expand and improve the effectiveness of our efforts. And we want to consider how we can improve the ways we care for our community members who are impacted by sexual harassment or gender-based violence. So this was the original charge that President De La Torre gave to the task force. And since we've been meeting, we have expanded on all of those things. This is our member roster, and all of this lives on the website as well. And I do just want to point out that we have an error in Nola's title here. I know she's SDSU Senate Chair, not Chair of the Faculty Senate. That's a holdover from another document and a holdover from my previous institution where we do have a Faculty Senate. So I appreciate Todd pointing that out to me earlier today. We'll make sure that's corrected going forward. What you can see is that we have a number of internal folks. We have 4 external experts who have joined us, and a wide variety of perspectives and characteristics and expertise. And all of this also still lives on the website. So next slide, please. So I just want to clarify what the task force isn't, because folks have had questions about this. So we're not the sexual violence task force, which has been at SDSU for quite a long time and done some interesting work. That group is also meeting and having conversations about what it wants to be going forward. The Blue Ribbon Task Force is meant to be finite. It was set up to address a pressing issue that we hope to make recommendations on in the next year, and then it will go away. So what comes after it remains to be seen, but it's not a structure that's going to live in perpetuity. We're also not the I team, the implementation team that's working on addressing the Cozen report. I think of them as parallel processes. I serve on the I team, and Gail Mendez serves on the Blue Ribbon Task Force. And there are a lot of shared conversations, but the recommendations from the Cozen folks are very specific to the Title IX process. What the Blue Ribbon Group is doing is looking across all of our processes and procedures, not just Title IX. So we're really trying to figure out what can we be doing better to keep our campus safer. And we're also not Title IX, so we're not reviewing cases. Most of us, except for Gail, are not confidential advocates, but we are interested in Title IX policies and processes as they play out on our campus. Next slide, please. So just some things that we've been up to since May. We've been meeting both virtually and in person. So as you all know, probably I've scheduled listening sessions. I've held a few of those already. I had a staff listening session earlier this week. We did an all-campus university webinar. Next week, I have faculty and student listening sessions. I encourage you to sign up. I had 44 staff members register for our session, and as of this morning, I had one faculty member. So hopefully faculty will join that group and learn a bit more and also share your concerns. I've also had a lot of meetings with a lot of different people. So a lot of folks want to meet one-on-one. They're more comfortable sharing things in not a group setting. But then we've also had, different group meetings with constituents and stakeholders across campus. I met with each of the deans except Janice. I was giving her a chance to settle in. I'll meet with her in a couple of weeks. Just to hear from the deans about their own colleges and what's happening. I've met with the assistant deans. We'll just be meeting with a variety of folks and an open invitation to anybody who wants a meeting. That door is open, so please reach out. With some help from Stratcom, we created a confidential online form for sharing information. Doesn't have to be confidential, but people do have that option. And we've had some really interesting responses through that form. It's different from the reporting of an incident. This is much more about what are you worried about? What are you concerned about? What would you like the task force to pay attention to? And then with the help of our GSA, we've been developing a database of national programs and interventions and policies, which has really allowed us to cast a wide net to see what's working and what's not working in other places. And we do know that no campus has fixed this, that the rates have remained fairly static. Some campuses do a better job of supporting survivors. Others have lots of prevention in place. So we're just trying to find the things that are working and avoid the things that aren't working as we begin to make our recommendations. And then we have begun to dig into our policies and procedures. Next slide, please. This has been a more emergent role. You all probably know that this role doesn't exist anywhere else in the CSU. And so so the role has been to support the president in this space. That means chairing the Blue Ribbon Task Force. It means advising her on issues that relate to gender-based violence and harassment on our campus. It means serving on the I team. It also includes putting in for grants connected to this work. I'm happy to report we were funded by the Office on Violence Against Women, which is part of the Department of Justice, for a project, which I can say more about if folks are interested, but to partner with our community and cultural resource centers to make sure that our practices actually make sense in all of our diverse communities on campus. We've never really asked that question. And then we're waiting on a second grant notification, which would be a partnership with Campus PD, with Chief Murphy's enthusiastic participation to develop survivor and trauma-informed content that would then be implemented in campus policing around gender-based violence. And then a number of other folks have reached out to us from across campus with ideas and collaborations, and so we're managing those on an ongoing basis. And then because my role doesn't exist on other campuses, it turns out that I've been hearing from other campuses. So often I will hear from faculty or staff who may have had concerns about their Title IX process. Often people just want someone to talk to who isn't on their campus, and they want to bounce some ideas or share some concerns. So I've been talking to folks from across the CSU. Next slide. Might be the last one, actually. Yep, last one. So there's my email address. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know, Nola, how much time we have for that, but I'm always happy to have a one-on-one with anyone to share more about what we're doing.
Thank you, Monica, for your report. Dr. Casper, we will open the floor now for any questions that anyone has. We have any?
Great. So if no questions, I will say, and thank you, Nola, for also serving on the task force, but I will say that we are going to build out the website. Right now, it's fairly basic. It lists the members and the meetings, but and we have a very robust shared drive that isn't public, but we are going to start adding things to the public website, or at least the campus website, so that what we're doing is transparent and visible, and people might have questions. So I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, so we are actually about a few minutes off schedule, and I don't know if AS President Morrissey is here.
He's on Zoom.
He's on Zoom. Okay, are you with us right now?
I'm with you guys.
Thank you. So you're recognized for your report. Please go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, we can't hear you.
November 3rd, Career Advantage kickoff event. Can everyone hear me?
Now we can.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. We had our November 3rd Career Advantage kickoff event, which actually went better than most people expected, including myself. So we got there and there was around, I think this is an underestimation, so I'm being conservative, probably 300 people there. And then within like circulation, there was probably around 500 or 600 students that found it really useful. We had Google tabling, we had ASML tabling, which is a microchip company. We had the president of the university come and speak. We had 4 amazing guest speakers come and speak. It really activated and excited and galvanized a bunch of students to participate in thinking about their career futures. And we received positive feedback that students want more things like this. And this is merely a kickoff event. It was just symbolic that a lot of students wanted to come. And now we have between today and January 16th to create all the programming, what we're going to roll out, the fact that there's headshots and marketing everything. And then January 16th, students will be able to use the lounge in the bottom floor for certain hours to learn about careers. We are in the process right now of creating a career advantage advisory committee. That advisory committee will mobilize and meet with all relevant campus partners, including career services, the Division of Research and Innovation, the Alumni Association, the president of the university, and through those partnerships and the CIO, whoever that happens to be. And during those meetings, they'll be equipped with information to be able to provide relevant solutions to students. And hopefully by March, we will have proven efficacy, and that this career advantage is a really important thing that is offered. We are filling gaps. We are directing students to all the right spots. They are finding it easier to get a career, and we will employ a tracking mechanism to make sure that we are producing results for students. And then it can be something that's institutionalized, and there can be positions that are career related that could be run for during elections, and also appointed positions that we interview students for. And we have to make sure that, first of all, those students are competent and have some sort of skills that make them valuable to the students who need careers. The other thing that's really been happening in Associated Students is we are always the campus partner that students come to whenever there are crises that are related to social situations. And obviously there's a conflict. And right now, all the students come to our meetings. So for the past 2 CLC and UC meetings, we've had students from the Israeli side and the Palestinian side telling us about how they feel unsafe, and telling us about how certain incidents have happened in their community. You know, people have been spit on, people have been attacked in the parking garages, things of that nature. And until 3 or 4 days ago, none of these incidents were reported, and they were not reported on inclusive SDSU. There are some things related to sexual harassment, and none of these things were reported until 3 or 4 days ago. And so the whole time we've been encouraging students, please report these incidents. I know it's difficult for you to have to prove that your life matters and that these incidents did happen. I know you don't want to have to prove it and, you know, feel like we are accusing you of lying, but it is good for us to have this information to be able to provide a solution in the future. And we talked to Randy Tim, Christy Samarcos, and there is this idea of something that happens at the University of Nebraska where all incidents that are reported are placed on some sort of heat map to say that, you know, more events are happening here. These are the people that were victims of the event, and to basically amplify the events so that when a student is attacked or something, it's not, you know, I am submitting my incident and I'm being reached out to one-on-one, because some of these incidents, they serve as examples. And if we put them out there as examples, it can be beneficial to more than one student. And a student that feels like they've been attacked and is brave enough to come out can feel like they're making a difference for students in the future. And so that was a cool idea we've had with Randy. I think we're going to collaborate to make sure that there's some sort of heat map that's included on the inclusive SDSU page to say, you know, this type of student was attacked and it was a hate crime related to blank and blank. These are the areas that are unsafe. Also, we've been telling students to submit to us their events for the future. And if they can do that, we can pivot and decide to send them security. Here's a security guard for all the people that are at your event. And the dangerous part is when a student is leaving the event and going back to their car or home by themselves in the dark, because we've seen attacks in the parking garages. You can have a security guard come in and walk them to and from the location that they're at. And tomorrow we have a CLC meeting. It is projected that students will come in and speak and give public comments. And those meetings are very heavy and they're very emotional. But I think that part of the healing process for this particular case is for students to get things off their chest and to have their voices amplified and to have their identities serve as an example to other students. And so I think it's good that we provide that platform. It's also good for associated students to hear what's happening. We also have representatives from student affairs and campus diversity that are there, and those are all the relevant partners. So, you know, all those things that are brought up will be able to be addressed, hopefully through associated students in student affairs and campus diversity. If there's something that's brought up that's not able to be addressed through one of those two campus partners, it's good that it was said in a public forum and we can try to find the relevant person to address those needs and concerns. So those are the two main things Associated Students has been working on. Homecoming went great. Samlin Gao did amazing. She planned around all the things that have happened, and we had the homecoming court, and it was a nice break in between all the hectic stuff. ARH is almost over, and you know, I think we had a record-breaking year because I've been seeing Leo work, and he's been working very hard. So we have a lot to be happy with, and then we still have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, President Morrissey. You look tired, like you've been working hard. We appreciate all that you're doing. I did have a question. Do you have any idea of the numbers of these incidences that have happened thus far?
The number of the incidents? The types of incidents range. I don't know why I can't hear you very well, but the number of incidents, there's a lot. And the severity of the incidents range. So there could be something like an Instagram comment that's reported as an incident. And when we think of an incident, our brains automatically jump to, you know, a parking garage situation. So if I were to tell you, you know, 20 pages worth of incidents have happened, not 20 pages worth of people being jumped in a parking garage have happened. But there's been more minor infractions that are more frequent, like Instagram comments or someone maybe yelling across like the aisle while someone's walking on Campanile Walkway. People have been spit on, things like that. And then there's the major ones that people really bring attention to. There was one comment that was threatening gun violence. Yeah, and those are the incidents, I think around 10 to 20 pages worth of incidents have been reported.
All right, well, thank you so much. I know these seem minor, but microaggressions build up like paper cuts and they can really traumatize folks. So thank you. Senator Schultz, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would like to also thank President Morsi for all that I know he is doing. And he's been an incredible support to all students. And I know that it's been very difficult and he's just been everywhere doing everything. And I really appreciate his steadfast support. I also wanted to let everyone know that the Center for Inclusive Excellence is going to be offering a number of sessions over the next month or so on being what is called an upstander to help out. This is going to be for both students and faculty staff, and that AVP Imazeki has a 20-minute presentation that she can bring to different groups and so forth to help if people want to know how they can be supportive during these very difficult times. So I just wanted to share some more information. Not all the information is out about everything that's going on. There are a couple other events, hopefully some interfaith events being planned for those of us who are trying to work across lines and not be divisive, very much in the message, in the spirit of the message that you read, which I greatly appreciated. So thank you very much. And thanks again, President Morsi. I cannot thank you enough for what I know you've been doing.
Of course, and I know you've been working very hard too. So just know that I know that as well.
Thanks.
One thing I forgot to mention was that we are drafting up an email. We've been reaching out to students one-on-one that have had issues with any sort of incident or have specific events they want us to cover, but we're sending out a proactive email to all members of both of the communities that are affected and saying, if you have an event, here is the security you can request, and also if you've been attacked, here's the incident reports. So it's just an email with all the relevant resources, because a lot of times people don't know where to submit things. It's just a proactive email. We're going to send that out probably on Thursday.
Thank you. Another question, DEI Chair Hernandez.
Yes, thank you, Chair Butler Bird. I just had a question. You did mention about someone getting jumped, and I'm wondering if it is the same incident was brought to our attention through the Islamophobia Task Force in terms of the specifics of that situation. Looks like it may have been a Mesa College student visiting SDSU students. But any sense of whether there's been any action on the part of the university on this particular incident, since we're kind of hearing that there hasn't?
Yeah, I think it's the university is saying that since that person was a Mesa student, they are not sure what to do right now. It did happen on our campus, so there's some degree of responsibility there, and it was a targeted attack. And the car of the person was also stolen. And I was gonna say one more thing about the incident. Oh, and the incident has been reported. So I think a police report has been filed. So I think that anyone who wants to get anything really done and done in an expeditious way needs to report it. And I'm very happy to hear that it's been reported.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your report. Get some rest. We'll see you soon. All right, so we're gonna move on to our final report of the day, and that's interim vice provost. Pruitt Lord is going to be here on behalf of our interim provost, Tom, who couldn't be with us today. So you're recognized.
Thank you, Nola. Just to let people know that interim provost Tong is interviewing the San Diego Community College District chancellor candidates today at the San Diego Community College district office, and sends his best. So we'll start with an enrollment report. So this is coming from AVP Hyman. And so what you'll see here are our spring 2024 admissions projections. And that the first column is showing the first year deferrals, and any of those that actually were at community colleges this semester will come in as transfer students, but as lower division. Then in the middle column, you see our more traditional transfer students, then we're looking for at 312 of those, and then some new graduate program. So these are our spring admissions. Our next slide. It's just a reminder that registration began on November 1st. Currently, we have 8,021 students currently enrolled, and appointments will continue this week and next week, with a reminder that enrollment by permission number only begins on January 23rd. So I want to do our best to get the students enrolled prior to that. And for our fall 2024 admissions, for the San Diego campus, the Cal State Apply opened on October 1st and will remain open through November 30th. The Imperial Valley campus opened on October 1st and will remain open through December 15th. The decisions will be released between December and March. We've got another exciting Explore SDSU planned for Saturday, April 13th. With an intent to enroll deadline of May 1st. We are definitely on to have a record-breaking year of number of applications received. Right now, in terms of submitted applications, we're up about 7%. Graduate applications are up at 26%, and our freshman applications as well. Transfer right now, we're a little lower at down about 9% from year over last year. And the final slide, I think, shows kind of what this large trend, when we collapse across all of those groups, the green line reflects where we were at this point in time for last year's admission cycle, and the blue line is reflecting where we're sitting at. So we are definitely looking at more applications coming in for this year than last year. And that concludes the enrollment update. And then in terms of other news, the tenure track searches, we have 58 searches that are open in terms of offers accepted, 2 in accounting, 1 in management, and 1 in marketing. So the Fowler College of Business is moving theirs along. We have 1 offer letter out in marketing, and 53 of the other searches are in various stages. And I think that is all that I was asked to report about at this time, but we're not.
Okay, so we have one hand raised, and that's Chair Lack, you're recognized.
Yes, hi, thank you. As APMP has been asking all semester, we'd like to know the number of faculty separations so that we know the total number of gained faculty lines that we're actually getting this year.
So we're at a gain of 11 this year when we look at searches compared to separations. And if that has not been provided in a written response back, Pam, to your group, then I'll inquire about that as well.
Oh, we'd actually ask that it be shared whenever faculty hiring data are shared publicly in any context, that information be contextualized. So we would just like to ask that it's always included.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. I'll make sure I get that to the provost.
Thank you. Another hand. Senator Schellenberg, you're recognized.
Hi, good afternoon. I was curious, given the recent changes in the definition of R1s starting in 2025, it seems like congratulations, we're now in R1 as of 2025. So I'm curious how that will, or how the conversations are going and how that will be communicated with regards to how this will affect strategic planning, resource allocation, et cetera. Thanks.
And no, thank you for the question. And for those maybe who haven't been paying as much attention to this, in 2025, the new cutoff for R1 label will be such that it's spending 50 million on research and awarding at least 70 doctorates in any research field in a given year. There has been, and then the R2 will be 5 million in research expenditures and 20 doctorates, and a new category of research colleges and universities for those with at least 2.5 million. And the rationale, I think, from what I gleaned from various articles and stuff on this, is to kind of lower the temperature around the various research categories. And so to recognize a wider variety of institutional accomplishments, including students' socioeconomic and social mobility, and research that's done outside of just the doctorate training. So in terms of what changes have happened in terms of discussions around how will things look different at this institution in terms of resource allocation, I don't think we've had the news long enough for it to get to my level where anybody's given me that information, but I certainly appreciate the question, Stephen, and I do believe that we can expect to see some discussion about that, but from I think reading what that means, then San Diego State should fall in that category, and looking forward to see what that means for us in 2025.
Right. Senator Sherman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Some clarification from what Senator Schellenberg said. So is the definition for what equals an R1 is changing? And therefore SDSU is going to basically become R1 because of this change rather than because of the strategic planning. Is that did I hear that right?
I believe that people would have predicted we would have been in it. There was a high probability we were going to make it in the next allocation either way. But yes, based on the new definition change, we would be in that category.
All right, thank you, Senator Kelly. You're recognized.
Yeah, thank you. And this is a little, it's part of this discussion in general, and I know you won't be able to directly answer this, but there's talk of having a new biology building, but we were also told that it will only house 2/3 of our faculty. So there's two issues. One, where the heck did the rest of us go? And they tell us, trust us. Frankly, I'm going to say I don't. But also, if you're going to be an R1, which I guess we're going to be by default, I assume that sort of means that we should be growing and we should be like thinking about new faculty. And I don't know how we're going to do that if we have a building that only houses 2/3 of our faculty, and we're going to shut down and mothball the other building that they're currently in with no promises of where it's going to go. So, well, how do you factor in like where we go and are you connecting the institutional growth and changes, the faculty tenure hours, with our future ideas of where we're going to grow? And I'll just point out that biology is an incredibly important part of the campus that brings in a lot of research dollars. And I just don't see how we can do this if we're going to shove us into like, you know, we have a size 10 foot and a size 7 shoe.
Thank you for the question. And my understanding is that yes, with the new building, not all of the faculty spaces would go there, but part of the reallocation of looking at resources and space is beginning to look at how do we put people with similar types of research in some space, and then maybe your other biology faculty that don't need the same requirements of a wet lab at the same level could go into other spaces. I can say that I am co-chairing the interim space management committee with Mark Reed and Eric Hansen, where we are beginning to try to look at some of this and how do we forecast where folks, the space that's being used, so that we can best address supporting faculty's research and creative endeavors in the spaces that would allow them to get that work done at the best level. I do know that, you know, there are other things that are happening in other parts of the campus and in different buildings, and that's part of why it's folks from 3 different divisions who are working on this kind of space decision, along with a whole bunch of committee of representation. But we've been named as kind of the co-chairs to kick this off, to begin to forecast how do we handle our immediate space needs, but also what are we doing and planning forward to address many of the questions that you have. In terms of mothballing the building and other things, I do believe, though, that there is some expectation that other spaces are being opened up to
Right.
meet some of the needs.
I know Brian's probably going to follow up on this, but I think we've got to be really clear that we're already feeling that we're being shut out of this conversation, and we're not, you know, listen, you can't just put all the biology in one building and not expecting it to be a total disaster, because our research is so different. You know, for instance, you cannot put virus people next to the people who do cell culture, next to the person who does algae work, because they're going to contaminate in the entire space. And my concern also is very clear that if you say, well, we're going to put you somewhere, it's like, well, now you have could have scattered us to the 4 winds. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves in one of us is in a basement somewhere, and another person is in Mission Valley, and another. And so please, we've got to be in these discussions, you know, and we've got to, you know, and also about growth. Like, are we going to get new faculty, or are we going to be constrained to the small number that we currently have? Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Henschel, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Rutherford. Just a real quick follow-up to what Scott said. There's been a lot of discussions, especially by email, among biology faculty about what we're gradually learning about the new building. And requests have been made over the last week or two for our department chair to organize a meeting at which the provost attends and the other major administrators involved in the planning with that new building, and more broadly, how the existing biology buildings are going to be modified as a bigger picture for the facilities for the biology research and teaching mission. So specific question, has the provost been able to schedule that meeting? Are there discussions ongoing about that? When will we be able to have that kind of a forum to hear what that space committee you've referenced is doing, and all the decision-making processes and the input from the ground up biology faculty?
I should, to clarify as well, our group is really on the larger picture of other pieces. My understanding is that there's a STEM forward group that's working on the space, particularly related to the one that you are. I saw the request come in yesterday, recognizing that the provost is out yesterday and today. I suspect that meeting will be scheduled shortly. I do know that there were also a number of meetings with different consultants who are working on that building. And my understanding is that that there is a true desire to make sure that the voice gets heard from the various faculty, to make sure that we get that to the consultants as well as that STEM forward group. But noted, and we'll make sure that meeting gets scheduled.
Well, and I also want to say that as chair of URMP, Chair Henschel, you should be involved or on all of these committees. So please.
Yeah, although I'm not sure I have the time for that, but thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd.
All right, see no other hands raised. Thank you so much for the report. And we will now move on to our information items. I'm wondering, are there any information items that anyone would like to pull? I'm seeing no hands raised. Can I get a motion to approve all of these information items, that they be accepted as presented?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Who was that?
Senator
Wait, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
What did you say?
Senator May Newman.
Oh, Senator May Newman.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so is there anyone who dissents from having these items accepted into the agenda and approved? Secretary Fuller, is that, oh, that's an old hand. All right, seeing no hands, these items are accepted. And we will now move on to the rest of our reports. Secretary Fuller, your hand keeps going up and down.
I apologize. When you said, when you gave Sonia Lord Pruitt the floor, you said it was our last report, and I just wanted to make sure that we got back to the beginning of that list. So yeah, you got it. You got it.
All right, so we will move on to item 6.1, and this is a short SDC report. We really want to thank SDSU Retirement Association's Senate Rep Patrick Papple for working with our newly retired Parking and Transportation Services Director, Debbie Richardson, to bring the parking website into alignment with Senate policy. There was an error on the site that indicated that new retiree had to be 20+ year employees, but it's actually 10+ year employees. Oh wait, that's still on there. So, oh, this is the old version. It has been updated so that new retiree 10+ year employees are not eligible for the parking benefit unless they're conferred by the chair of the Senate. So that change has been made. Thank you for catching it. We will now move on to item 6.2, Senate Vice Chair report. Vice Chair Vasquez, you're recognized.
Chair Butler-Byrd, so the, what? Oh.
So the referral chart here, I received.
Turn off their audio.
Hello, okay. The referral list is here. I will say that I issued 3 new referrals. I think it was on Monday, Friday, can't remember. So it's not this is not updated. So but it will be updated for the next Senate. And I've sent out some emails. I'm sure y'all have. I just want to make sure that you know, the referral list is up to date before I check out. But I also wanted to offer kind of like a Senate referral drop-in hour. So I'm gonna schedule that for December. I'll send an email out to all the committee chairs. So I'm looking at like December 8th. I don't know if y'all want to hold that now on the calendar, but I'm thinking of just kind of setting aside like from 10 to 1, just like a Senate referral drop-in hour for anyone to come in. I can help just talk through any pending referrals if you have any questions with that. And so, but also I'm happy to meet with y'all. So yes, I know that.
Can you just ask what is the timeline?
There's not really a timeline. It's really just up to the committee, you know, to do, you know, work towards it. But I know that you sent me an email, so we'll check in. But yeah, so any questions on the referrals or referral chart for now? No? Okay, thank you.
Seeing no hands raised, thank you so much. We will now move on to item 6.3, the Senate Treasurer's report. Treasurer Sharma, you're recognized.
Thank you. So I think here you see on the screen again the expenses that had been made this academic year since semester started. And we are looking for some detailed assigned time, and there was some email communications. We have not had any clear-cut answers, so we cannot report anything. Thank you.
And we have a hand up. Secretary Fuller, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair Butler-Byrd. I just want to note that it shows here that we've only spent about $1,000 or around $1,000, but that's because we haven't sent out our fund transfers yet for course buyouts. Those memos have gone out. The money will go there, but we are waiting because we're having dialogues about how folks get assigned time, and if they can't get assigned time, there may be other options for how they can receive benefit from doing the work of the Senate. Until some of those conversations have gone where they need to go, we won't have a full report, and those transfers won't appear here. In case anybody's worried that they're not going to get their assigned time, you will get your assigned time transferred to your department as we would usually do. So we usually do it after the semester anyway. So after the first semester, before the end of the year. So it might look like we're not spending our money, but it really is already mostly spent. So just wanted to add that detail in case anybody was confused by how low it looks like it costs to run the Senate. But yeah, that's not, it's misleading.
All right, so we will move on now to item 6.4. Well, actually, we did the committee on committees and election because I think he already made the report. So that's already been addressed. We will move on to, we're actually finished with all of our reports. So thank you very much. We have actually finished her, and it's only 4:11. Shall I get a? Got a motion to adjourn. We second. So that was Camper made the motion. And we have a second from Sharon.
Thank you.
Can you get a what? Some cookies.
No.
We had to give up the cookies for the budget. Thank you all so very much. Have a good, and see you soon.